Welcome to another episode of the Real Israel podcast with me, your host, Chaim Malespin. I'm here in Israel with someone who I've just met. His name is Francisco. He's a professor, and he's a professor at UCLA.
No, not anymore.
Not anymore.
No, I was a professor at UPenn.
Okay.
And then I was a professor at ITAM in Mexico City.
Okay.
And at Universidad del Medio Ambiente. But now I have
Spanish.
Resigned from all universities.
Okay. And you were Mexican born, but you lived in Chicago, and you were a professor in Pennsylvania.
I was professor at UPenn until they fired me.
Until they fired you.
Yeah.
Ooh. Now, this is going to be an explosive interview, of course. His opinions are his own. I recognize we're in a time, though, where we have to come together. I'm obviously a sergeant major when I'm not here on this podcast. And this is a tank shell, a pagaz. You stick this in the tank. To defend Israel, we have to be able to look at the reality. When we talk about hasbara, which is advocacy for Israel, hasbara, you realize this is a very hard subject. How can you stand for Israel in such a world, in such a time where people in universities, where they're supposed to be the most intelligent, the very elect, they're supposed to be wise, and they're busy out there with signs saying, down with Israel. There is only one solution, Antifada revolution. My mom was almost killed in the second Intifada by an exploding bus. She missed her bus, so she's alive. But I went through the bodies as a young boy. I've been here for almost 30 years, going soon. It'll be 30 years. And so I remember looking, and I'm saying, this is what an Antifada is. The Sbarro's, pizza blowing up, the Dolphinarium blowing up, buses blowing up, suicide belts. Everybody's suspect when you see them with a cord coming out of their sleeve or whatever.
Right.
Like, no, that's a headphones. Okay, How dare these students say there is only one solution, Antifada revolution, or Khaybar ya Yahud, which is Arabic for, we're going to do Khaybar again, which is the massacre that Muhammad did on the Jewish community of Khaybar, and then took the one girl as his wife that she's like, 8 years old or whatnot, killing her dad in front of her. We're in this time on the Real Israel podcast, and I'm so glad to hear from you. And this subject, I understand you're not a Jewish person, but yet you stand for Israel, and you are an advocate for Israel. How's that working out for you?
Well, it is working out very well, because it has filled my life with meaning. I feel like I'm doing the most important thing that I could be doing, because I am fully convinced that there is nothing more important in the history of this planet than the Jewish people and the Torah.
Wow.
Yeah, I think
I'd agree.
the impact of the Jewish people on Western civilization is that the Jews saved Western civilization. So one of the things I talk about very often in my articles, in my books, in my podcasts, is about how when the Jews came in contact with the ancient Westerners, right, the ancient Greco-Romans, those people had governments that were entirely psychopathic.
Yeah, I mean, they had the pantheon of gods. They had to worship each god through actions. Maybe one, it's cooking a cake. Maybe another one's sacrificing a person, the god Nemesis. They would want to get revenge.
Well, but quite beyond the religious system, these people thought that torturing another human to death was entertainment. So they had stadia.
That's right.
They'd build a huge stadium in order to watch a lion eat a human being, or in order to watch two human beings fight to death. This was like going to the movies to them. So obviously this was a psychopathic culture. It was an incredible, they had oceans of slaves, of sadistically treated slaves.
So you're saying Jews being what we're called to be a light to the nations.
Well, Jews have been a light to the nations, to all of the Western nations. So once they came into contact, once these Greco-Romans came into contact with the Jews, they came into contact with this idea that we can all be nice to each other, right? So Hillel the Elder, Rabbi Hillel the Elder, he's the origin of all of Jewish jurisprudence, because he's at the heart of the Mishnah. So that guy, the origin of all Jewish jurisprudence, laid down the principle that everything in the evolution of Jewish law, ethics, and politics, all of it has to be consistent with Leviticus 19:18. love your neighbor as you
That's right.
love yourself.
Yeah.
He said it in the negative. Because he's being a practical rabbi. He says, that thing that you hate, don't do it to your neighbor.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you base an entire code of ethics. You have a constitution in America. You have in England. You have law, the Senate, and the ruling.
All of that comes from Rabbi Hillel the Elder. So he was born in Babylon, but he came to the Mediterranean. He came to Judea right during the time when the Romans conquered Judea. And it's at this time that Greco-Roman culture is really coming into contact and confronting Jewish ideas. And the Jews of that time were making thousands of converts. And even beyond those thousands of converts of every nation, there were many Noachites like me. In other words, people who didn't convert to Judaism, but realized, oh, this is the religion.
Torah is the thing.
Torah is the thing.
Okay.
So they became Torah worshippers without converting to Judaism. Those are people who are subject to the 7 laws of Noah.
Yeah, God worshippers, but they follow the Torah. Yeah, I got
they don't follow the 613 commandments or the subsequent jurisprudence.
Right.
We are subject to the 7 laws of Noah, which are the basic principles of ethics. And this population was even bigger than the population of Jews. So there was a tremendous ideological change going on. And Christianity is part of that. Christianity emerges as a Jewish movement.
Of course.
Within this larger cauldron of sociological and religious innovation and development that was happening in the first century before and after Jesus. And everybody in that space realized that Judaism was the future.
Yeah.
You know?
Many people don't realize that a lot of things came from Israel, from right here. Like not just cherry tomatoes or seedless watermelon or the cell phone the way we have it with the antenna and the whole, GPS systems to triangulate and so on. Not just those, the very, Superman, the very fact that there's a savior who is coming.
Superman is the Messiah.
And that's written by Jewish people.
Of course, the authors are all Jewish.
Yeah, and the whole, Somewhere Over the Rainbow song. I remember just thinking that there's a land and a people, there's a Messiah.
Yeah.
These terms are taken for granted, like, all right, of course. But where did they come from? From Israel, from here.
Well, look,
yeah.
you can see that when you look at the difference in terms of narrative type between a Greek hero and a Jewish Messiah. These are very different kinds of models. So in Greek literature, the Greek hero is a murderer. He's someone who goes around killing people and killing them arbitrarily. He's not, out on a quest for justice at all. He's just he's a warrior.
Just a warlord,
Whereas the Jewish Messiah, by definition, does have to be on a quest for justice, helping the weak, fighting oppression, setting the slaves free, all that kind of stuff.
Saving the human race,
fighting
even if
crime.
If they don't deserve, like Superman's story.
Exactly.
But now, here's my question: did any of that get you fired from?
No.
No. You talk about Israel. Now I know that. Have you experienced some of this anti-Semitism in campus and seen it for yourself?
So no, what got me fired? These kinds of things are things that I began to understand after I was fired. No, what got me fired was the historical fact that I was not the first to document, but that had been suppressed for a long time. Nobody had talked about it for decades. It's a historical fact that I considered very important to the proper understanding of the Arab-Israeli conflict. And so once I realized that this was true and that nobody had mentioned it for several decades, I thought, well, I should say it. So I wrote an article about it, and that's what got me fired.
Essentially, you're seeing a lot of anti-Semitism, a lot of attacks against Israel, a lot of undermining of Israel, undermining of our integrity, of our sovereignty going on across the board. And you're like, what's causing this? Who's on what side of what fence? I get it, and we can go into that a little bit more. But
you didn't ask me what was the historical fact that I published that got me fired.
What was the?
I was setting it up, and you didn't ask me
about the Oslo Accords.
No, it was that I started looking at the history of the Arab-Palestinian movement.
Yes,
because I was interested in understanding the whole history of the conflict.
Okay.
because they had my PhD was on how racism works, how the psychology of racism evolved, right? So they had hired me at a think tank that had to do with racism and ethnic conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And the big topic there was the Arab-Israeli conflict and the Oslo process and all this stuff. So I started getting very interested in that conflict. I had not been a specialist on it before. I started reading about it. I started doing my own research on the history of Zionism, the history of the Arab-Palestinian movement. And right away, I come across Haj Amin al-Husseini, who is the founding father of the Arab-Palestinian movement.
That's
and
right.
I start digging into this, and it turns out that Haj Amin al-Husseini, wait for it, the founding father of the Arab-Palestinian movement, was running the death camps for Adolf Hitler in Europe during World War II.
Yeah, that picture is not a one-off. Right, that's the whole point. It's not a one-off picture. He happened to take a selfie with, or someone took a picture of him and Hitler. That is the head of the Palestinians.
The founding father of the Arab-Palestinian movement, in other words, the mentor to Yasser Arafat and Mahmoud Abbas, the creator of Al-Fatah, which then ate the PLO and is now called the Palestinian Authority, right, in Judea and
He was
Samaria.
called the Grand Mufti, is his official name.
That's right. That guy, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, Haj Amin al-Husseini, that guy was running the death camps for Adolf Hitler during World War II. He was a top Nazi. He had his own bureaucracy. It was called Bureau des Gros Mufti. He was a big figure in Nazi propaganda. He organized the entire SS divisions for Heinrich Himmler out of Bosnian Muslims and Albanian Muslims that killed Serbs, Jews, and Roma in Yugoslavia. But the worst thing he did, and this was documented at the Nuremberg War Crimes Tribunal after the war, the worst thing he did is that he organized with Adolf Eichmann, who became his best friend, he organized the entire death camp system and ran it with Eichmann. Everybody knows about Eichmann. Almost nobody knows about this guy.
Yeah. Well, I kind of got to a similar thing I was saying earlier before we started, that when I was thinking of the Twin Towers that were attacked by Al-Qaeda and all the other stuff aside, but Osama bin Laden was a very wealthy man. His family was very, very wealthy. And so people like Candace Owens, like Tucker Carlson and other spokespeople who are very anti-Israel will say, well, maybe America was doing something in Iraq or Afghanistan that was causing the cause and effect. I'm looking at cause and effect. Maybe because of America doing something caused them to be very disgruntled from their pursuit of the American dream, not the jihadist dream. They don't know what the difference is, it seems like. And then because of America doing something to them, they decide to attack the Twin Towers and cripple the West. No, it's because of the ideology behind Al-Qaeda, the teaching. Some would call it a spiritual or a psychosis that is anti-Semitism. A spiritual reality and or a psychosis, a mental disease, which is anti-Semitism. Same is true when you start to say what caused the Holocaust. What caused this death? Is he an Aryan? Are they all, very blonde, blue-eyed Aryans? Is Haj Amin al-Husseini a blonde, blue-eyed Aryan?
Well, he was actually. He was a white guy. Remember, not all Muslims are Arabs.
That's right. But he wasn't blue-eyed, was he?
I think he was red-haired, actually.
Okay. Yeah. But the thing is, the people he represented were not. There is a camaraderie. There is a coming together of elements. For example, Iran used to be called Persia. There's a theory, again, this is in the realm of, I don't have the backing of facts to bring this, more of a realm of conspiracy a little bit, that they changed their name when they heard of the Aryan race of Hitler. They said, we want to also be Aryan. We change our name from Persia to Aryan. Aryan Iran.
Yeah, I think
they're not what.
So I think the line of questioning you're on is the right one. It's like, what is the fundamental...
it's not just one group.
Yeah, exactly. So what is the fundamental cause of anti-Semitism? That's a very interesting question. And I've tried to answer this. I have a whole series of books.
Is it because Jews are bad at banking?
No. I think the way to try to figure it out is to look at all the different episodes in which there have been mass killings of Jews and see if there's anything that is looks like a pattern, right? And I think there's a very clear pattern. I think it's amazing that nobody talked about this before, because when you look at every big mass killing of Jews, and we've had them periodically for 25 centuries in the West, every time the people organizing the great mass killing of Jews are also enslaving the Goyim, the non-Jews.
Okay.
It's always going on. It's every single time. There's not one exception. So if you think about the jihadis, the modern jihad. So think about Qatar. Qatar is the intellectual author of what happened on October 7th, just a few kilometers from here. And Qatar. So Qatar is organizing mass killings of Jews. All right.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
Funding.
At the same time, Qatar is enslaving the Goyim. Okay. There are more or less 2 million slaves working in Qatar, and these are literal slaves. These are people who cannot leave, who are abused physically and sexually, who often don't get paid when they are no longer useful. They're thrown on the street. Okay, these are slaves, literal slaves,
no rights,
like they had in Rome.
Yeah.
Okay, like they had in Rome. So the people, the ruling elite organizing mass killings of Jews, the Qatari Al-Thani family, those people are also producing millions of slaves. Okay, that's the pattern. The Nazis were doing the same thing. The Nazis enslaved all of Europe, and killed the European Jews. The Russian boyars had a serfdom system. So, and they were organizing pogroms of Jews, right? The Catholic Inquisition enslaved everybody. It was a totalitarian system. Nobody could say or think anything that was not authorized by the Pope, or they'd gather some wood and burn you alive, right?
Right.
Those people were organizing mass killings of Jews, all right?
Because that's a dangerous ideology. Torah.
Well, this is.
They can't.
I think, and if you go back, just to finish the list, if you go back to the Romans and to the Greco-Macedonians, we just got discussing that. Those societies were making oceans of slaves, and guess what? They also committed genocide. The Greco-Macedonians in the one that is commemorated in Hanukkah, and the Romans in the 1st and 2nd centuries committed genocide against the ancient Jews. No, the Romans. This is when they destroyed the temple. Remember?
Yeah.
That's part of a genocide. The destruction of the temple happened in the middle of a gigantic genocide.
Titus,
of the Romans against the Jews. Exactly. So every single time the people organizing great massacres of Jews are enslaving the Goyim. What does that tell you? I think it at least suggests that there may be a connection between human freedom and the existence of the Jews. And so the people who want us to be slaves don't want the Jews to exist. Now, didn't we just say a second ago that it was the contact between the contact of the Jews with the Greco-Romans that made the West better?
Human rights is because of Israel.
Exactly.
And now it's being turned on us like, no, you are against human rights.
All right, but stay with the mechanism, all right?
Yeah.
So if human rights are a consequence of Israel, a consequence of Jewish thought, okay? If that's where it comes from, then if you want to extinguish human rights, if you want to enslave everybody, you will try to extinguish the Jewish people. You see? And I think the entire model makes sense because why? Because the Jewish people are basically a social vehicle for a body of law. That's what they are, okay? The entire identity of the Jewish people is the law of Moses. That's what the Jews are. You take the law of Moses away and you're just a label. Okay? So the law of Moses is the cultural content of Jewishness. All right? What is the law of Moses? The law of Moses is a law that was given by the Creator to the Jewish people after he freed them from slavery.
Interesting.
Okay? So they were slaves in Egypt. The Israelites were slaves in Egypt. Brings them out of slavery. And he's always reminding them, and you must do this or that, and remember not to forget this, because I took you out of Egypt, out of the land of bondage. All right? So it's not a law like any law. It's the law of the escaped slaves.
Free people.
Exactly. It's
Freedom.
a law. It's a law designed to protect individual human rights and fight oppression.
Right.
Okay? To protect human freedom. That's what it's for. So the people who want to enslave everybody are always going after the Jews, because human freedom came from the Jews. You see?
So you're trying to say any other development which is not the Torah, Israel, the Jews, the Judeo way, is actually another way of enslaving, of enslaving the human race.
No, I'm not saying that any other social system will have to be bad. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that in the West, there has been a struggle between the Jewish system, which is obviously a very good system, which has made us better. It saved the West, right? So there's been a struggle between that system and the Greco-Roman system.
That's right.
So we are still in the fight between the Greco-Roman and the Jewish systems. And when remember, the Catholic Church is a hybrid, and the Catholic Church created the West. And the Catholic Church it's a chimeric institution. It has a Greco-Roman government, but it has Jewish texts,
which is essentially dictatorship plus oligarchs or your cabal, your yes men.
That's the Greco-Roman.
The Greco-Roman.
System. Yeah.
You got your dictator, you got your oligarchs or your czars. If you're looking at Russia, you got similar form of bad government, which they call it communism, call it whatever, but it's dictator. You got your yes men and women, and then who have to do what you say, or they're out, they're jailed, they're killed.
Right, but so what we have in the West today is that in the countries that we call democracies, you have the bosses, the power elites, who are existing these days in a cultural space that is Jewish.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
This is Judeo-Christian civilization now in a full sense.
Okay.
Which means that the people running the institutions have to speak the language of Jewish values. They have to say that they are for liberty, for freedom of speech, for democracy, for human rights. They have to say all of those things. Okay? They have to.
Even if it's pretending.
Even if it's pretend, they have to say it because the cultural space is Jewish now.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
So that's a big victory for Jewish civilization. They've been cleaning up the West over the centuries. We've paid them back horribly with great massacres. But even so, the impact of Jewish ideas has been cleaning up the West. Okay? So, but the performance of the ruling elites is fake. It is hypocritical. So to really understand what is happening to us, the model that we defend at Management of Reality is precisely what our name suggests.
That's what it's called, Management of Reality.
The Management of Reality, because
think tank.
What we claim is that the reality in which we live is thoroughly managed, and it has been for a long, long, long time.
You mean like TikTok and Instagram and all the media brainwashing
I mean all
people?
of the mainstream media.
Okay.
No, this is not a new phenomenon. This is very old. This is as old as newspapers.
Okay.
So we have, because your reality is not something that you witness. There's no such thing. You witness almost nothing. You witness this room. That's it. Okay. When you go out, you witness a little bit of the street. Maybe a few people pass by.
Right.
You have a conversation with your mom, maybe with a couple of cousins. You don't know anybody else. You have no contact with reality, really. Your entire model of reality, everything you think is true about the U.S., Israel, your own city, your own town, any place on earth, everything, it all came to you from the media.
Right.
Absolutely everything. Okay. So if powerful people can exert clandestine centralized control over what looks like a free media system, people will trust the free media system to be producing a relatively reasonable representation of reality, right? And then they will be fully indoctrinated.
Convinced to do something, to act a certain way.
Exactly. That's what you would do it for. You manage reality so that people will do the thing you want, thinking they're doing the right thing. You see? Yeah. So, for example, you tell them that there's a genocide going on in Gaza, right? You tell them that. And then people who want to send the signal that they're good people who oppose genocide, right, become enemies of Israel. That's what the bosses wanted the whole time. They wanted masses of Westerners attacking Israel, reducing the objection to the coming genocide of the Israeli Jews. That's what they want.
There's a scary verse that, you know how when Daniel was praying and he was forbidden to pray because you got only the dictator. You just got to pray to the dictator. That's the level they were at in Persia back in the day. Right. And hey, maybe it's again that way right now with this dictatorship and their opposition. So he said, the prince of Persia opposed me, and he's fasting and praying. Took 21 days until Michael, the angel, breaks through, and he's like, what? So my point is, he says, the prince of Persia withstood me, but then the prince of Greece will come. Something often overlooked. It's just this prophecy. What is the Prince of Greece? Like he's saying, like a spiritual reality or a spiritual force of like, we're dealing with the Prince of Persia still today.
You have to understand, in Jewish literature, Persia is good and Greece is bad.
Right,
So if they're contrasting a Prince of Persia with a Prince of Greece, I'd have to go look at the text again.
Prince of Greece is coming and it's bad. That's my point.
Exactly. So Greek is always bad in Jewish literature, and Persia is good. Why? Because Persian civilization was ethical. It was founded on an ethical ambition. Okay,
Mhm.
and so was earlier Babylonian civilization, and the Persian Empire, which became a patron of the
Mhm.
Jews, was a combination of the Persian Zoroastrian
Mhm.
search for an ethical civilization and the Babylonian Semitic search for an ethical
Yeah, the
civilization. It was a combination.
Medo-Persian. Yeah.
It was a beautiful thing. The Persian Empire was a truly interesting and
3,000 years of peace. It just sucks.
no,
that
no, no.
these-
That was 200 years. The Achaemenid,
Okay.
the Achaemenid Persian Empire was 200 years. But it was an amazing thing, and that empire became enamored with the Jewish movement.
Mhm.
And Cyrus the Great, the founder of the Achaemenid Persian Empire, subsidized the return of the exiles to
That's
Jerusalem.
Aliyah. I love it.
Exactly, and subsidized the reconstruction of the temple, and protected the Jews and supported the growth of the Jewish movement in the
Mhm.
Persian Empire. So I think that's how you read the contrast between Greece and Persia. And the Greeks were, of course, the psychopaths we just described, so they were obviously bad.